hopefully we get something good here. Okay. There we go. Hey, good evening. Oh wow, we already have people here. That's awesome. Over 8.5 subs, 10 by the end of August. I wish, man, but my growth has been relatively stunted. It's been growing, but considerably less so in this past month. So I'm playing around with different ideas and different different video models, and we'll see how it goes. I wanna play around with a couple of ideas and see how the audience reacts to it, responds to it, and hopefully I'll get a little bit more of a bump in that. But we'll see. We'll see. Hey, sup. It seems like there are no PC problems this time around. Yeah, thankfully. Most of today, I was working on a new reaction, and this reaction video is actually pretty long. It looks like it's going to be somewhere between 40 to 45 minutes, and just because I had a lot to say about it. But it'll be, hopefully I'll get it done by today. I should be finished with it by today. But it is a Dan Vask piece, so stay tuned for that. Hey, Blue. Magnitude 7.1 has struck southwest Japan. Yeah, I heard about that. I saw that on the news, but from what I read from it, it seemed like nobody was injured and structures weren't devastated. Thankfully, even though it was an earthquake of that magnitude. Actually, just recently, as I was getting ready for bed one night, because I usually go to bed pretty early, just before I was about to enter into REM sleep, my phone just started doing that emergency alert dial tone, waking me up because there was an earthquake not too far away from where I lived, and it let me know of it. And I'm like, great. And then I closed my eyes, and then I started feeling it. And there were dozens of aftershocks afterward, and I'm like, I'm just not gonna go to bed tonight, am I? But it was fine. Everything was fine. Nothing too bad. Tsunami advisory was issued as well. Oh man, I didn't even know that though. All I read was the article in and of itself. So I'm hopefully everybody's okay. And no, this would not deter me from living a life in Japan should I choose to do so. I still think it's a very beautiful place. This is the first time the Japanese government actually issued the mega quake advisory. All tsunami. Oh wow, that must be terrifying. Yeah. Like, this is a really great example that just goes to show that for all of the people who think that everything wrong with the world is humanity, it is not even remotely true. Like, a lot of the world itself is a pretty dark and very scary place, and through past generations and through understanding what works and what doesn't through society, we have been able to mold varying aspects about who we are as people, as humanity, and allow ourselves to not exist in a state of constant fear of wild animals, of the elements, and more focus on advancements in society and culture and things like that. So I ultimately, I still see humanity as a very strong net good. Question, do you prefer Daniel or is Dan okay? I really don't care, to be perfectly honest. You can call me Daniel, you can call me Dan. Typically, my family is the only are the only people who call me Danny. So it would feel a little weird for people to call me that. But honestly, it's just a name. I really don't heavily associate myself with just a name. I associate myself with my character and my principles. So whatever you want to call me is honestly fine. Are you okay? Okay. Yes, I am going to go grab some water really quick. All right. I always keep water right next to my bedside. All right. Man, what a week it has been. Oy. But we are here, we are vibing, and we're just here to chat and have a good time. Something I've been thinking about is committing to storytelling in these live streams, but then at the same time, I don't know. Because on one hand, I really love storytelling, although when I typically read books, I read something, I have a couple of errors in it, so I go back and reread it, and then I reread it again to make sure that I've internalized all of the information that I'm reading. And I don't know how that would fare in a live setting. So, man, you guys should have seen me when I started working on YouTube videos. Like, if you guys have seen the first few videos of the channel where it's just me storytelling, those videos took so long to make. It took me hours just to get through a story as short as The Cat in the Hat, because I was coming up with different voices and can I make this voice consistent? Like, can I make this voice very consistent? Is this something that I can maintain all the way through the story? How is it that I want to evoke these particular expressions or emotions and things like that? And then as I was navigating through that and I finally made it through the piece, then I had to go onto a website and find particular audio that matched the theming of the book, and that took a long time, and editing all of it took a long time, and I had no idea how to create thumbnails, so that took a long time. And it was it was such a long process that I just said I need to create content that's not only easier to make, but something that I actually feel considerably more fulfilled in, because it's killing me. So that's how these music reactions were born. I know I cringe when my family calls me Johnny. Woody is my nickname. Oh, right on. Well, if you don't mind me calling you John or Woody, I'll stick to that. Is that from your mom's side? I'm not really sure what you mean from that. But yeah, so yeah, like I was saying before, this week has been very long. A lot of focusing on work and maintaining a more disciplined schedule, just in terms of there are things that really fulfill me that I really want to spend a lot more time focusing on and driving towards, such as consistent reading every day of material that I genuinely think will help me grow more as a person. Whether that be nonfiction, or even if it is fiction, the strong lessons learned from that particular type of writing. Something like, I've heard nothing but raving reviews about Dostoevsky and Crime and Punishment and things like that. I also have a lot of books I haven't even begun to read yet, such as a full biography of Mark Twain that I would love to read. I had recently finished reading Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, and that was very insightful. I have plenty of other people's autobiographies that I've yet to touch that I would love to get the opportunity to dive more into as soon as I'm done reading the current book that I am reading, which is actually a rereading of, but I want to really instill the information because the book left a lot of strong impressions in me, which is Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature, and that has been an exceptional read. Isn't your mother Jewish? I live in a Jewish area outside of Detroit. My neighbor is Jewish and says "oi" a lot. So, if we're going by Jewish law, where you are what your mother is, then yes, I'm Jewish, but I don't really ascribe myself to any one particular religion. I create the kind of person that I am, and everything that I value and my own principles, morals, and ethics built off of a lot of foundational principles from varying religions and philosophies, that paired in tandem with personal experience, how I've personally interpreted the world around me and have interpreted the wisdom that well-experienced people have imposed, or rather imparted, onto me. I know that sounds very nebulous, and I'm sure it is, but this isn't necessarily a conversation that I would prefer to really dig deeper into in an online setting. This is more one-on-one intimate conversation. But yeah, and the same can be true for my grandmother as well. So it all just comes down to how you see it. But yeah, a lot of my lingo, though, is also very similar to who I am as a person, where it's just, I really like how these things were said from this time period, so I incorporate that into my lingo. And there's some things in this current age that I like that I incorporate into my lingo. So ultimately, like, if you can tell throughout the entirety of my videos, I say, I really dig that, or that really bites, or that's really groovy, or varying elements that are taken from different eras, and I just like having fun with lingo, you know? I wasn't going there, I just thought that you picked up the phrase from her. Yeah, that's fair. And I'm not necessarily sure where I picked it up from. I actually might have picked it up more from my grandmother and grandfather, and my grandfather is definitely not Jewish. But just based on his own life experience and the parts of the world that he's traversed down and experienced himself and familiarized himself with and experienced, I'd say that he also incorporated it into his speech. So I don't know where I picked it up from necessarily, but it's just a part of it. Yeah. So I had filmed the moments I had reaction from Den, who is a beatboxer, and when when I posted that video, I was really hoping it would have gotten a stronger response, because I was really excited to revisit the BBU, or just a beatboxing tournament that was held in 2020, and it was all online because it was 2020. And there were a lot of really good bangers from that, and I tried to pick a very popular video in hopes that people would respond well to it, and it was very unsuccessful. So I found that to be a bit of a shame, but honestly, it's okay. Maybe we'll try to revisit it in the future, but it's just not in the cards right now, unfortunately. Is opera training like theater training? When you study theater in New York City, Yiddish becomes second language. That's pretty difficult for me to answer. And the reason I say that isn't because I'm unfamiliar with theater culture, but I went to a university that had a strong theater department and a strong music department, neither of which were the best. And man, so quick backstory on my life in that regard. When I had graduated high school and I was applying around for different universities, I got into a couple of very prestigious universities for opera. And I was really excited because I knew the deans of the department from my audition, and they were very interested in me and offered me scholarships to attend, and it was really incredible of an experience and such an honor. And I still couldn't afford to go. It was still ridiculously expensive per year, and me and my family just couldn't afford it at that time. And I ended up going to a cheaper state university instead, which also had a strong department, but it wasn't my vision. It wasn't my goal. But I still learned a lot from it, and I definitely grew with it. And I had a lot more enriching experiences because of it, I believe. I like to believe that things happen for a reason. So when I went to my university, I was always hanging out with a lot of the theater kids because a lot of musicians were not insufferable. I made pretty good rapport with a lot of the musicians there, but there are definitely niches and cliques of people everywhere. And I guess just saying theater training requires a lot of model building and set work and prop work and understanding obelisks and all of these different elements of theater outside of just acting and rehearsing and all of these different elements. Where opera is, this is the voice. This is Alexander technique, which is essentially learning how to control your body in such a way. Or, which I'm sure theater kids also learn, but not as many do. It's required for music students. There's musicianship. There's vocal pedagogy. Which is essentially vocal anatomy. There's opera doesn't really focus a lot on the performance aspect of it so much as the musical aspect and execution of it, where theater is much more broad and robust in terms of its education. And neither of which I think are very productive towards what I think each student wants. Where if you go into theater, you want to excel in theatrical skills. Like, I remember I saw a performance of The Drowsy Chaperone, and a colleague of mine was blindfolded roller skating around the stage, very reminiscent to Charlie Chaplin's execution of that bit. And that was amazing to look at, but he had to essentially teach himself to do that. It wasn't taught anywhere, and it wasn't a skill he could learn from anyone. Same thing with tap dancing. Same thing with singing in musical theater or things like that. It was all very frustrating, and the program is very broad and doesn't focus on theater. Where with opera, opera singers want to learn how to perform better, but we're so hyper fixated on the musical and musicianship aspect of it that when we're actually out on stage, we're static and it's not exciting to look at. And I think there's problems with both departments in that regard. But to answer your question, no, I don't think they're very similar, but I wouldn't say that they're very different either in terms of the overall output that the students get, which is not the expectation you had when entering the department to begin with. In terms of actual performance, I was very fortunate that I engaged a lot with the performance technique professor, who was also a Broadway star, and I asked him tons of questions. And his wife is a professional dancer who has performed also on Broadway. And I asked her tons of questions and got to work with them and got to ask the casting director of the Metropolitan Opera questions, of the Los Angeles Opera questions. And it's a whole thing, and it's needlessly convoluted. From both departments, both theater and music. And I have no idea what departments are like outside of my university. I can only recite what my personal experience has been. But with all of that said, I hope that somewhat gives context to the answer to your question. First live I'm catching. Love your analysis and the emotions you show during your reactions. Isiva? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you so much. That is very considerate of you to say, and I appreciate you for saying so. Thank you. Hi. I really like your reviews of song artists. You are I'm guessing you are cool. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hello from Ukraine. Hello. Yes. I wish for your current safety in that entire situation. I'm sure it's a lot, and for you to have such a positive attitude here is deeply appreciated, and I wish you happiness and well-being. Question. Your titles start with opera singer. Another channel I subscribe to is Sir Hairless, and he states that he is a classical singer. Can you explain to a musical novice the difference? Yeah, classical singers are musicians who are classically trained. Opera singers are vocalists who are classically trained. Both of which are essentially the exact same thing. It's just the phrasing. Open the door a little bit to differing styles of classical singing, but typically classical singing refers to opera. But it doesn't necessarily specifically mean opera. Like for me, I would label myself as a classical singer because not only does my experience in music reside in classical music, it's not limited to just opera. I can sing German lied, I can sing musical theater, I can sing a myriad of different styles of music, but it all falls under the vocal umbrella of classical styles of singing. I say opera singer because I feel many people that I've engaged with, if I say to someone that I'm a classical musician, they might think, "Oh, that's really cool." But it's not like we're necessarily a dime a dozen, but saying that you're an opera singer, at least to me, feels like there's a little bit more of a specialization in what it is that I do. So if I tell someone I'm a classical singer versus an opera singer, opera singers will typically receive more of a, "Oh wow, I haven't met anybody who's an opera singer," or "That's a very niche skill," in comparison to a musician who performs classical music, where you could be any kind of instrumentalist, or if you say you're a classical singer, it might fall under a bigger umbrella. So to specifically target opera is more of a specialization. But that being said, if Sir Hairless is also a classical singer, then I would fall right with him, hand in hand, in that umbrella, saying that I don't just sing opera, I can sing a variety of music that falls under that classical umbrella. So I hope that answers your question. Hello from Ukraine. Hello. Juilliard was quite near our theater. You reawaken great memories. That's awesome. One of the people I went to university with went to Juilliard for his master's, and he was a very controversial man, and he had no problems striking arguments with anybody. But man, the voice on that guy, oh my gosh, just magic. It was gorgeous. And on top of it, it was really fun finding out that he and I actually shared a voice teacher outside of the university. So I was a year older than him, and after I graduated, I started studying under a really brilliant teacher that I personally feel like I didn't get the opportunity to spend enough time with. I want to say that I only had about 12 lessons with him, one lesson a week over 12 weeks. And he's just one of the most rich, pure sounding basses I've ever heard in my life. And as I was coming in for my lesson, and I went to his house for lessons, that same vocalist who later went to Juilliard, my colleague, was just exiting as I was coming in for my lesson, and I was taken aback, and I thought that was pretty cool. Do you consider beatboxing harder for learning? Wait, do you consider beatboxing hard or learning to sing opera? Oh, I see your question. Okay. So the answer to that is it depends. It depends on what it is that you ultimately want out of opera versus what you ultimately want out of beatboxing. For me, beatboxing is a fun hobby. It is something that not only lets me pass the time, it's something that I can devote some of my mental faculties to and just say, I know that the more I practice this, the more I'm naturally going to get better over time, the more accustomed I am to making these particular sounds, incorporating them into these particular beats, and it's just something fun for me to do in my free time. Where with opera, for me, it was definitely something of, this is the best way that I am able to express music. And I have a very deep connection with music as a whole, not just classical music. But the easiest and best sounding way for me to share my music is through classical music. So, or through the style, let's say, of classical music. So I deeply enveloped my time and energy and everything into, okay, I want to understand music theory. I want to have a basis for understanding how to read music. What does it mean to have something like fixed do versus movable do? How do I learn different elements of music technology and make my own musicianship better because of it, and in this adapting world? And learning different modes of music. And one might consider modes of music to be major and minor modes, which are definitely modes that go under different names, such as Ionian mode. But there are different modes such as Mixolydian mode, Locrian mode, and hypos such as Hypomixolydian, and etc. And it's all a very complex process, but all of this I saw was genuinely worth it in the pursuit of greatness, of excellence. And that's when I started going out and competing and taking on national tournaments and traveling internationally to perform, learning from various sources of knowledge in music, in classical performance, and learning varying cultures and what it means to perform music in that culture. And music is the greatest form of expression that I have for me personally. And I really wanted to focus on that. So in that regard, I'd say learning the ins and outs of music in terms of classical singing is harder than beatboxing. But that being said, it's also, and I've mentioned that this next comment I'm about to say was proven to be very controversial because I said it in a Dimash video. Or it's one of the reasons why it was controversial is because I said it in a Dimash video. But music is a completely subjective experience. There were many vocalists at my university that practiced their entire lives to be excellent musicians. As early as I was, and I started really enveloping myself at music. My mother tells me it too, but I consciously was aware of my love for music at 5. And I just stuck with it all the way to where I am now. And, you know, I have many colleagues who had spent their entire lives, just as I had, in pursuing excellence in music. And when I heard them perform for the first time, things that were completely outside of their control, their natural timbre, or the way that their voice just naturally sounds, things that you really can't control, it just doesn't sound good. Their natural vibrato, things that you really have no control over, that you can refine and modify over time, but things that are just the way they are, it just doesn't sound good to an audience. And that's heartbreaking. When I was in Germany and the person that was leading the voice class, the real master of the music that we were performing for, when he went to vocalists who have been training their whole lives and said, you need to find a new career because opera is not going to be worth your while, that's heartbreaking and traumatic to hear, especially when you've given your entire life, devoted your entire life to this field, only for an expert in the field to come up to you and say, you should not be doing this because you will never become one of the greats. You will never excel beyond where you are currently. And that's terrifying. It just sinks your heart into your stomach. And there's a lot of criticism like that is not only terrifying to hear, but it doesn't feel constructive until they actually start laying into you, like, these are the elements that are unchangeable, these are the elements that are changeable, that you can modify and mold, and it becomes actual criticism, but the point of the message is still the same, and it's just so painful to hear. And in terms of beatboxing is also similar to that regard of classical music, where there's just things that are outside of your control. Like, if you have very thin lips, it's going to be very difficult to produce a very powerful kick drum. Like I would say my sister has thinner lips, so when I was trying to teach her how to do a kick drum, her kick drum sounds like in comparison to the, and that intensity of a kick drum can have a huge impact in the way that a beat is formed. But ultimately, it's also learning specific sounds, learning basic sounds like regular combinations. Boots and cats is a great way to start beatboxing. Boots and cats and boots, but just focusing on the consonants. And then mixing it up a little. And then learning a different way to do that K. And then playing around with, oh wow, okay, so I can play with my tongue a little bit more on, and just playing around with that and learning different combinations. And then over time, as you learn more sounds, you can start creating really unique beats and combinations and sounds, and also drawing a lot of inspiration from a lot of the professionals that are posting their videos on YouTube all the time, and I definitely recommend checking them out. I'm nowhere near the level of a professional, people that devote their entire lives to beatboxing, but it's really important to keep in mind that each have their own easy goals, their low-hanging fruit, but also each have their own immense challenges. So for me to say which is harder or which is easier, it just depends on you. It depends on your goals. It depends on what you ultimately want for yourself and what it is you're more naturally adept towards. And there's just so many different factors that make it, whether it's easier or harder. And it's a very nuanced question to answer. So I hope that helps in some way. Fellow classical singer here, by the way. Hence the oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I love having more classical vocalists here to discuss things. Were you a part of AGMA? Just curious, since you dealt with AGVA performers. AGMA. Oh, no. No, I was not. I was never a part of any guild or association or things like that. All of my gigs have been either through my own pursuing of personal competition, personal betterment in varying programs, or just constantly progressing in the Los Angeles area, the greater Los Angeles area. I went from very small nonprofit companies, and I started getting paid more and more for bigger and stronger companies for varying roles. And then 2020 hit, all the theaters were shut down, tried to learn new trade skills. ultimately did, but I also took that as an opportunity to reflect on what it is that I really want out of myself as a musician, and what music actually means to me, and putting all of the stress of my life by saying, I need music to work. I have nothing else if it doesn't. And then at that point, I really started resenting music. I started saying, I hate the fact that music is not giving me money in the way that I had hoped, even though I'm excellent, even though I know my skill, I know my worth, I know how much time I'm putting into this. And I know that, and the thing that was really the nail in the coffin was when I was asking the casting director of the Los Angeles Opera, what do people's salaries look like? He said, if you are a regular at the Los Angeles Opera, which essentially means you are at the top 0.1% of vocalists in Southern California, which is a pretty large pool of people, then 70% of your income would come from that gig. The rest would come from teaching, side hustles, and performing for other companies around the greater Los Angeles area. And that sounded miserable to me because my voice teacher was a chorister at the Los Angeles Opera, and he had one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. And he said, yeah, I don't do lead roles at LA Opera just because I get paid a really good amount for being in the chorus, and it gives me so much more free time to pursue other things. And to me, I was just thinking, well, the things that I really want to do in my life is travel the world and experience other people and other cultures and build bridges with them, understand their lives, and understand how it is that they engage with the world and why they do so. Like, I find so much intrigue and interest in other people, especially people that I don't share common views with. And I think that that's the most important aspect to me, and I don't want to be locked in any one place. And if I was performing for a top tier opera company, yes, I might have the opportunity to travel, but at the expense of literally all of my free time. I wouldn't be able to have a family should I choose to do that in the future. I wouldn't be able to focus everything, like all of my energy and mental faculties, towards the things that I really want to do, which is engage with culture and other people. And it would just be so soul-sucking, just devoting every single second of my life to something that's just not returning the same dividends. So that's when I started to step away from the music scene. And also there were a lot of people that are very nepotistic, very cutthroat, and I just didn't like that kind of environment. But I also didn't want my musical knowledge and love of music to go to waste, hence the YouTube channel, and saying, I really want to experience music in a way that's rich and authentic for me. I'm never going to blow smoke up people's butts, but I also want to make sure that I'm fully engaging with the music, that all of my reaction videos are focused on my true appreciation of music, and I can share a little bit of my musical knowledge to the layman, and we can all just appreciate what's happening in this musical performance together. And I think that's the real beautiful aspect of these particular reaction videos that I do. Movable dough all day. I agree with you. When one of my colleagues was from Israel, and all she was familiar with was fixed dough. And even though fixed dough conceptually is easier to identify. I think movable dough is so much more flexible in terms of understanding key changes and varying things like that. So I prefer movable dough as well. I really connect with you on that front. Hit thumbs up button. Thank you. Christ, so cool. Oh, thank you. Evidently, your boots and cats and variant. Well, my hunter was listening, and I think you were telling a body joke in cat. He was nearly laughing out. That's awesome. So cool. For liking to hang around people with different views. Yeah, thank you. And that's really something I try to drive home as often as possible, which is, and this is something that I even say to my partner, who is also my best friend. And I emphasize that point, one, because I don't get into a relationship with someone unless I know that they are my best friend, that they are someone that I've spent months, if not years, with to understand them on a deep personal level. But even beyond that, it lets me know that even if the romance in the relationship fails, that there's still real substance in knowing who we are as people and respecting and loving and understanding each other as people, that even if the romance doesn't work, that we still have that foundation to lean on and know that we're still going to be okay and maintain a strong friendship in that regard, which I think is very, very beautiful. There's no point in just completely erasing things that you've spent your entire life building just because romance didn't work. But that's also because I don't put a heavy emphasis on romance. Hey, Spartan, thank you for catching me here live. It's really great to have you. Man, that just completely interrupted my train of thought. It's not your fault. I just get sidetracked very easily. But yeah, so in terms of connecting with people in different views, something that I tell my partner all the time is I appreciate our differences. There was early on when we started testing the waters with a romantic relationship. Oftentimes, if she were to comment on something, I would more often than not disagree with her. We have our similarities and we have things that we connect with regularly, but I would say that we are far more different than we are common. And that's something that I really do love about being around her, is the fact that I see her character and I see her values and her ethics and her principles. And her character and her principles are things that I deeply connect with her with. The way that she treats people is so compassionate and caring and fun and jovial and affable, and I love the kind of person that she is. Her values, her ethics are so polarizing from mine, but I find that to be so interesting. I don't want to be around people who think the exact same way I do, who share the same values and opinions that I do, because I already know what I think. I already know how I feel. How do you feel? and telling her I really appreciate our differences helps her realize that I'm very sincere in saying that it's very intimidating being around people that don't share your views, because we live in a world where, at least in Western society, people have a very difficult time processing the fact that you are able to live just as happy a life with different values, with different opinions than people who exist within a certain community or group of people. I find that there are many people who are very resentful of other people for having their own views outside of their own communal ethics or values, their value system. And I want to stop that as much as I can. Not directly through telling people to stop it, but just living my life in a way that goes against that kind of thinking. Just having people observe me through my action by saying, I love the fact we're different. I love the fact you have your own values and principles, but yet we can still choose to exist with each other. One of my other best friends, he and I, in terms of our values and our principles, could not be more separate. But that being said, he's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. His character is exceptional. He's a deeply kind and compassionate human being. And we just see the world from the light side and the dark side of the moon, just completely opposites. But that's okay. And we still love and enjoy each other's company. We communicate with each other pretty regularly. And we see each other in ways that are truly valuable for us, which is recognizing our strengths, our weaknesses, the places we're ignorant in, the places we don't have opinions in, the places we have strong opinions in, and just taking it a step at a time, recognizing that we don't need to think the same and enjoy each other's company regardless, and saying, well, what is it that we truly value about each other? For me, to him, I deeply value his sense of humor and his character. For him, to me, it's pretty much the exact same thing. And we both really appreciate and value each other's work ethics and draw great inspiration from each other in terms of our work ethic. And whenever we discuss things that we differ on, like in terms of a particular societal opinion or happenstance, then we'll either comment saying, I disagree with that and this is why, or we'll say, you know, I have a differing opinion and that's okay and we don't need to go into it any further, or whatever the case is, but we're at least communicating openly, honestly, and directly. And beating around the bush, dancing around those little, or just playing those little games, neither of us really enjoy that or appreciate that. We're very direct people, and communication is always key in any relationship, not just romantic ones. And I've been applying that kind of mentality not just with friends, but even with family. There was a period of time in my life where I just completely disassociated myself and disconnected myself with everyone, friends and family. It was a very dark and tumultuous time in my life for sure. But it was because of that when I really started experimenting and exploring what it means to be my own person and to have my own values and to structure my life in a way that's rich and authentic. That's when I was able to reconnect with friends, reconnect with my family, and just ultimately create a much happier and more intuitive lifestyle. Hope you're doing well, and sorry, don't apologize. Thank you for the kind sentiment. I hope you're doing well as well. I can't broaden my view if I keep talking to myself. Exactly. I feel like a lot of people just want to have their own opinions validated by having other people repeat their own opinions back at them. And I understand that sentiment, and I've definitely fallen into that trap before. But for me personally, if I'm under a group of people that all say we promote individuality, but that individuality has to be constrained within a particular box, a particular system, saying that you cannot have opinions outside of this box, you can only play around with ideas that fit within this particular system, you start recognizing the hypocrisy of that. And the moment that you really start exploring what it is that you're more in tune with and what it is that you really want to connect with more of, then it becomes very challenging because we're social creatures. We don't want to completely forfeit all of the people we've ever known and loved and our entire lifestyle that we've spent our life building, all for it to just come crashing down because the people that we so heavily associate our self-identity with are now leaving us and abandoning us due to our experimentation in varying ideas outside of the box. So a really important thing that I've come to recognize is to find a way to truly make yourself happy. And I don't mean to say, just make yourself happy. It's that simple. It's really not. It's understanding hobbies that you really connect with on an intrinsic level, not just that superficial level that other people really enjoy, like, oh, so many people are getting into Magic the Gathering, I should get into Magic. No, like, if card games aren't your thing, you're not going to like Magic. That's just it. That's just how it is, like, or if you're not into painting a million little action figures, you're probably not going to be interested in Warhammer. But, if you're into, I don't know, if you're, like, using classical music. If you're into classical music, that's obviously much more of a niche field than the music being produced today. The music being produced today is very, here's the golden recipe for music. Here are the same 4 chords done with different lyrics because people care about messaging more than they care about the actual performance of music by today's standards. Not to say that there aren't real, incredibly talented musicians out there in the world right now. There absolutely are. I'm just saying the things that are really nailing the mainstream right now. Drink water. Thank you for that reminder. But that being said, it's... sadly I can't go... so small. Oh, well, thank you so much for being here, Spartan. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. Please take care of yourself. But yeah, with all of that said, it was... Lost my train of thought. True happiness to me makes you care so much less about what might otherwise make you envious or upset, I feel. True happiness to me makes you care much less about what otherwise might make you feel envious or upset. Yeah, I can relate to that. Like, oftentimes, like, I think very deeply about human nature and the state of what it means to be a human being. I involve myself deeply in varying philosophies. I'm constantly looking to improve myself and to allow myself to grow in very key ways, and how it is that I perceive the world and how other people perceive the world, and how I can incorporate their years of experience and wisdom into my life in a way that actually makes sense. Not just accept it blindly or reject it blindly, but actually engage with it in a way that's meaningful and incorporate the values, lessons, or virtues in a way that's authentic. And something I've recognized is things that we perceive to be very negative, things like the 7 deadly sins of wrath, jealousy, envy, greed, gluttony, sloth, etc., pride. Excuse me. It's... None of those things are inherently evil or bad things. They're commonly misconstrued to be bad because it gives us... It places us in... Or it's very easy for those specific emotions to place us in negative states of mind that ultimately cause us to spiral. But if we can utilize what those actually mean, like feelings of wrath or feelings of anger provide us an untapped amount of energy, a seemingly unlimited amount of energy that we can utilize to our advantage by saying, if somebody has really wronged us, can we go out into the world and say, I'll show you, and utilize all of this very raw, very intense anger energy, and instead of using it as a cannon to blast the people we're angry at, rather use it as kind of like a rocket booster, put it behind us and let it propel us to greater heights. And the idea of that just being anger ultimately providing us an unlimited source of energy that we didn't even think we had to begin with. Or in terms of envy, when we see someone who has a particular skill that we want, it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, I'm very envious, I have to destroy this person so I can give myself a feeling of self-worth. That is definitely a path one can traverse down, but it's not productive and is very harmful for obvious reasons. But you can actually utilize feelings of envy in a way of reflection, recognizing that if you see someone doing something that you're envious of, then you wonder, wow, this person who was born into this world with no knowledge or information was capable of performing this incredible task that I didn't even think was possible, or was capable of performing well in this particular moment of truth. Like watching a man disarm an armed robber and calling that person a hero and getting a lot of public attention. One might be envious of that kind of public attention. One might be envious of they themselves having a moment of truth and cowering in fear instead of going up and stopping the problem. And there's a myriad of reasons or a myriad of paths that envy can traverse down. But I think the most useful one is being aware of it, observing it for what it is, recognizing the utility in it, which would be, wow, they performed something, and actually transform that feeling of jealousy, of envy, into a feeling of awe, into a feeling of inspiration to actually drive and motivate your own actions towards your own view of excellence, towards your own view of self-empowerment and striving to do better things, not just for the community per se, but for yourself first and foremost. And I very strongly believe that you cannot help anybody, let alone help the community or help your state or whatever. You cannot help anyone until you have learned to help yourself. And if you are living your life in this completely miserable state, blaming everyone and everything for, well, I'm only like this because of these things, and just really adopting this victim mentality, it all comes down to self-accountability. It comes down to the only thing in this world that I truly have control over is my own actions, not even my own emotions, because I'm going to react intrinsically to things just based off of my own experience with these things. And I can always change and adapt the way that I feel about things over long term, but if something were to happen to me now that really negatively impacted me, I'm going to react in a very specific way. But with that being said, what actions do I take? The actions are the things that really decide who I am as a person and what it is that I ultimately want to achieve for myself. Am I better than this action that I'm committing to? Is being automatically defensive over something the right call, or is it actually listening to what another person has to say about their own view of the world? Or if a person is committing to an action that really goes against my own values and beliefs, is it up to me to stop them? Or is it up to me to ask questions? Or is it up to me to sit idly by and just watch it happen, or there's a lot of nuance that goes into there's a lot of nuance that just goes into these things. And it's really important to reflect on what's right for you. What is it that you truly believe is the right thing in a given moment? If you're at a bar and you're waiting for, I don't know, a date to get there, and you see a woman who might be taken advantage of, and she's very obviously inebriated, and people are inviting that woman into their car, do you take it upon yourself to engage in that kind of situation, to say, hey, this seems very sketchy, I want to make sure you're okay, I want to make sure that you call a friend, I want to make sure that, you know, you're not going to cause yourself to be put in a situation that is very compromising? And to many people that might seem very heroic, but if she retaliates and says, no, who are you, get away from me, all of these terrible things, at least you can take solace in yourself knowing that you did what you genuinely believed was the right thing. And it might leave a bad taste in your mouth, but if you can live your life in a way that is in constant pursuit of higher values, that is in constant pursuit of what it is that you ultimately cultivate yourself as, this is what I truly believe is the right thing, or this is what I truly believe will cause genuine happiness and longevity in my life, and I'm able to utilize that energy in such a way that I am now not only happy, but I am inspiring others to be happy through my own actions of making myself happy. People are very naturally observant, and I feel are ultimately capable of making these kinds of decisions for themselves, just through observation, let alone actual engagement with others. So it, you know, it just goes to show that we are really capable of understanding each other, but we have to be patient. We have to make sure that we live in this world where everything is instant or instantaneous, and to have the patience to slow down, slow our thought process, not make immediate judgments, not have any particular prejudice towards a group of people, especially a group of people that might have wronged us, and just view others with an open mind and an open heart. Not a vulnerable heart, but just saying that we are capable of sharing ideas, sharing emotions in a way that is controlled, in a way that doesn't expose our weaknesses. Just in terms of the conversation of weakness, it is up to each and every one of us to understand what makes us strong as people just as much as what makes us weak as people. And we don't need to go out into the world and advertise our weaknesses, just as much as we don't need to go out into the world and advertise our strengths. People are very naturally observant and will see what weaknesses or strengths you have throughout the course of your relationship with that person. But it just goes to show you, if you know what your weaknesses and strengths are, then you can adapt to that information by saying, okay, these are my strengths. I can focus on making these strengths even stronger. But I can also focus on making my weaknesses not weaknesses, but transform those weaknesses into at least neutrals, if not strengths. And if I am able to manipulate these into strengths, it leaves me so much more room to explore with new ideas of the world and explore with new activities and ways to engage with the world. Because the moment that you explore with something new, you're probably going to be a novice at it. You know, you look at something like the Dunning-Kruger scale, where you start an activity and you think you're amazing, but then you quickly realize the depth of how far this thing goes, and you realize how much of a novice you are at it, and then you got to start building your way back up to that level of extreme confidence and cognitive awareness. And it's And it just comes to the point of allowing yourself to take on new weaknesses, transform those weaknesses into strengths, and you're just constantly adding to your strengths. And if there are particular strengths that you want to be heavily strong in, then go ahead and do so, but not at the expense of ignoring your weaknesses. People who ignore their weaknesses make their weaknesses very blaring, and they don't even mean to. They consider themselves to be very strong, but that's just a ruse. It's just a facade that one can very easily read through. And the moment you try to address it, they sink even deeper into their weaknesses by becoming intrinsically defensive and justifying that defensiveness. And it just comes to the point of you can't help other people. All you could do is help yourself and lead solely by example. And the more that we engage with other people in a real world sense, not just through social media, but actually engage with people one-on-one or in a group setting or however the case is, just making sure that we understand who we are as people, what it is that we value as people, and they are going to be different things, and we need to accept that. It just makes engaging with other people so much easier, instead of walking on these very fine eggshells of, well, what does it mean to be politically correct? Can I say this word? And if I do say this word, am I going to be heavily judged or retaliated against? And oftentimes you gotta weigh the cost and benefit of that, whether it's, well, me saying this word is going to make me feel personally fulfilled, but it's also going to strike an argument with this person, and that's not something I want to engage with. So what's more valuable, me feeling personally fulfilled or avoiding this argument and weighing that? And then after you say it, if you still don't feel personally fulfilled, or if you have that argument with someone or if you avoid that argument with someone but feel like something is missing, then you've learned a little bit more about yourself. And you say, okay, well, if I'm ever caught in this situation again, I know that this is the thing that's going to genuinely make me feel happier. Or this is the thing that is genuinely going to make my life stronger because... And I'm not talking about a particular word, but any particular action that might be viewed as something negative outside of the group construct, then ultimately you are the only one in that particular instance who sees the nuance in that topic, who sees what it means to fully engage with this particular mentality and what it actually means to you. You know, a lot of people heavily identify their emotions not necessarily with music, but with particular artists. So if you criticize their artist, then it feels like you're criticizing them and they're going to be defensive about it. Whereas I just really love good music. And good music is very, 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 and I cannot drive this home enough, very, very much it is just as much as it is subjective to everyone. So for many people, really good technique and something very unique is something that people really love. For me, it's not even about uniqueness. It's not even about technique. It's just if I like the sound, if I dig the vibes. It's both bass, but it has so much nuance and complexity to it and depth. And that's what I really dig about different styles of music. I've been able to appreciate rap music because of this, just as much as I've been able to appreciate Baroque music, Gregorian chant, classical, rock, hip-hop, just jazz and blues, like R&B. Like, there's so many different styles of music that I've grown to really appreciate over time just because of the way that I truly enjoy engaging with music. And I don't have any one particular artist that I truly love over anybody else, because all of these artists have developed very strong skills in very niche ways throughout all of the musical spectrum. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. In my circle, we call feedback a gift, which I truly stand behind. By the way, your mic cuts out if you don't... What? I am sorry. I will try to be more cognizant of my mic. But yeah, absolutely. And that's something really important too, is feedback and criticism. Just feedback and criticism allows us to grow as people. Yes, oftentimes, especially when we engage with someone we've never met before and we just take on their criticism, it might sound like a personal attack against us, because they're just listing all of the things that are wrong and all of the things that we need to do in order to improve. But that's just it. It's things that we need to do in order to improve. They might present it in a way that is stoic, or in a way that might even feel emotionless, or maybe even farther into that, bitter, but acrimonious. But it just comes to the point of, does this person truly have my best interest at heart in this moment? Well, they wouldn't be criticizing me unless they genuinely had thoughts and opinions about what it is that I was doing. So I might as well hear them out. And if you actually end up exploring what it is that they said to you on your own time, in your own practice session, or in your own meditation and reflection, or however it is that they criticized you, and you just come to the point of, yes, I actually can adapt myself in this way that they've criticized me on, then it's a really beautiful moment that you can connect with another human being on. Even if they're not there with you as you're reflecting, you can at least come to the point of, wow, even though I was really frustrated and upset in that moment as I was being criticized, I'm now able to look back on that moment fondly, because their critiques, their advice, or their feedback actually served an overall net good for me. Oftentimes people's advice is going to be, it shouldn't be taken at face value. It should always be taken with a grain of salt. People can only recite their own personal sense of experience and wisdom because it's experience from their life. And you have your own life with your own rich experience and your own wisdom that you've gone out into the world and explored and connected with. And oftentimes people's advice might contradict each other, but it doesn't mean that either of them are right or wrong. It just means that both of you have your own lived experiences and have internalized them in very specific ways. And if somebody sees that you're struggling with something that might be the same as, or at least similar to, something that they themselves have experienced, and they impart their wisdom upon you, that's a real beautiful moment of human connection. That's somebody saying, I've lived your experience, or have at least lived something similar, and this is what I've learned from it. This is how you can make a decision that was better than the one I've made. Or this is maybe a decision that I've made that has proven results to work, but maybe it was only for my particular position at that time with the right circumstance. But at least that level of knowledge has now been imparted onto you, and you can do with whatever you want with that knowledge. The world is your oyster, but you just gotta appreciate the moments where people impart their own experience onto you, and not focus so much on talking so much as engaging with and listening from and hearing the advice of others, even people who are younger than you. You never know what someone is going through or what someone has experienced in the entirety of their life. Obviously, if you engage with someone who is elderly, they have many more years of experience to draw from, but that doesn't mean that they've lived a life as rich as someone who has lived every single day of their life in a much more grand fashion, you know? So it's really important to draw wisdom from a myriad of sources, not just from one particular mindset, one particular person, one particular group of people. It's really important to draw wisdom from all sources. Or that's at least what I fully, in my heart of hearts, believe. Couldn't agree more. Aw, thank you. That, yeah. Absolutely. I'm dying. I gotta get off my soapbox. As we say around here, just gotta roll with it. Yeah, honestly, that, you know, I've spent a lot of time understanding varying philosophies on not just in terms of religion, but just in terms of general philosophy, and just rolling with it, I've noticed is an actual common thread in a myriad of philosophies and religions, such as Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, elements of even Catholicism and Judaism, I've noticed, have that quality of accept the world as it is. If you are truly suffering, stop blaming the world, but see what you can do for yourself. And I find tremendous wisdom in that. So just roll with the flow. We as humans are programmed. We are designed to adapt, to evolve to situations. Like, if we were to look biologically at our Neanderthal ancestors, they had a much bigger, robust rib cage, where our rib cage has more shrunken down and our heads have expanded because we use more of that than our brawn. You know, we look at evolutionary traits like goosebumps. The reason we have goosebumps to begin with is because when the hair stands up on our skin, it makes us appear a little bit more big when we become overwhelmed with a feeling of chill or fear or anything like that, where the moment that we become bigger, it allows us, it gives us a particular evolutionary advantage if we were to engage with an immediate threat. So we are naturally designed to adapt to things, and it might not be directly in the moment that it happens, which is why we need to spend time reflecting and considering our actions on a regular basis. But even beyond that, it's just doing what we can to adapt, not try to change others, but allow ourselves to recognize what is, will be. If someone kicks a stone, or rather, if a stone just falls naturally in your path, is it going to do you any good to be mad at the stone? No. The stone isn't going to feel anything. The stone doesn't care. You know, it's, what matters is, okay, there is now a stone in my path. What am I going to do to get around it? Am I going to get around it? Am I just going to quit and move back? No, I'm going to find a way to adapt to it, to find a creative solution to get around it, and to keep moving forward. And or maybe you could just through sheer will break the stone and keep moving forward. Whatever creative solution you have towards maneuvering through or pushing through obstacles, that's completely your choice and your prerogative as a human being of the world. So you just gotta don't be mad at the stone. Just reflect on what it is that you can do to truly make yourself happier. Bill and Ted's philosophy. I don't think I know who they are. It sounds really familiar, but I'm not really quite sure. Be excellent to each other. Yeah. I think it's also important to acknowledge that someone who's showing poor control over their actions or emotions might already be trying their absolute best with what they're currently adapted or what they're currently armed with. Yeah. Yeah, I agree to that. I oftentimes, and I can definitely relate to this as well, just from personal experience, where if you're caught in a spiral of turmoil where everything around you is going wrong, you feel like you have absolutely no control over anything. Anything that you try is doomed to fail, and you just kind of take on that kind of mentality. All of a sudden, you actually start becoming an unrealized victim of yourself, of circumstance. And it's very easy to become bitter and resentful of others because of that. Even though a person might be focusing on, I'm just trying to stay afloat and do my best, it goes into the idea that insanity is trying the same thing every time and expecting a different result. And if all you're doing is I'll draw upon my own experience for this example, and viewer discretion because this is a pretty dark story, and I'll try to keep it pretty vague but touch on the key points as necessary, just so I don't go into too much darkness and depth as to what I'm about to talk about. When I was in some of the hardest points of my life, I was committing to actions that were very band-aid solutions. Like, I was feeling extremely numb to the world. And, well, okay, I need to be able to feel something because all of my emotions when I actually engage with the world are dead. All of my nerves, all of my emotions are dead. I don't feel anything when I listen to music. I don't feel anything when I communicate with people. I feel dead on the inside, dead on the outside. The only way that I can feel anything is through pain. So I started hurting myself. And through that pain came a cry for help, even though I didn't communicate with people. And as I was getting help, none of the help actually helped. What I really needed was someone that I respected to serve as a guiding star. And there was nobody in my life at that time who did serve as that guiding star. People were more just focused on, oh, well, you shouldn't feel this way, or what can I do to help, or if I try to help, he'll just hate me more kind of mentality. And it came to a point where I just needed someone to communicate with me on my level. And I'm a very direct, honest, and blunt person. And I've been trying to get better with that over time, where I'm still very direct and honest, but in a way that's a little bit more palatable instead of just brute, blunt honesty all the time. But it came to a point where it's very important to recognize, okay, I'm actually caught in this spiral. And because of that, my decisions in these other areas of my life have also been suffering. Even the areas of my life that are supposed to bring me joy have now been causing me pain and turmoil because of, yes, in part their decisions as well, but also my decisions. And when those elements of my life up and vanished, anything that I depended on for joy and happiness just completely eradicated from my life. For 10 months, I was caught in this state of limbo, this pit of nothing. Like, I didn't know what to feel, and I couldn't feel. There were days that I just spent underneath my bed with my face in the floor doing nothing because I just felt that empty. I felt like a shell. And it came to a point where I was just watching a YouTube video, and this guy had such a nuanced outlook of the world. And he spoke in a way that was very direct and honest. And even though the way he lives his life is quite different from mine, there was a deep level of, I guess you could say, parasocial, but respect. It was rooted in respect that I was able to generate towards him. And if I knew that that little inkling of light, of respect, was able to be birthed, that I knew that it was capable to give that to me as well. So through trial and error, through going out and, not intentionally of course, but communicating with others and hurting them because of just my intrinsic nature to be very blunt and very direct and honest, I've been able to mold and adapt myself into a way that has been not just more socially acceptable, but in a way that actually makes me more happy as a person. I've been able to turn myself even, and I'm nowhere near the level that I ultimately want to be at. There are tremendous role models in my life that serve as guiding stars for me to reach a certain level of true altruism, compassion, kindness, virtue, strength. Not just strength of physical being, but strength of character, strength of like inner strength. But yes, strength in my physical being as well. Just a myriad of varying aspects that I want to be the most well-rounded, balanced, and most capable version of myself that I could be as often as I can be. And to try to achieve that aspiration is an arduous challenge each and every day, but actually building up that daily resume is a challenge that I try to take on daily. And it's, some days it's considerably more difficult than others, but you know, it's a challenge that I take on nonetheless, and it's something that really makes me fulfilled as a person and enables me to commit to right action and things that make me more fulfilled more often, and actually creates feelings of admiration in my friend group towards me. And that's something that I never even thought was possible. And it's not even something that I tried to do. It's just something that happened naturally through working on myself. So it just comes to the point of really taking self-accountability. Yes, everything in the world that happens to you is most likely outside of your control. The only thing that you can control is your action, and you need to be accountable for your actions, what your actions mean to other people. I know for me personally, I have hurt people that I've hardly known. I have hurt people that I have been the closest to, not intentionally by any means, but it's just what happens. There might have even been times when I've acted solely out of a specific emotion, whether it was out of rage and hate or out of genuine love for someone that still ended up hurting them. Like, love is not an all good thing. Same thing with hate not being an all evil thing. Nothing, being completely consumed by any one emotion is not a good thing. Too much of any one thing is always going to lead to trouble. So it's creating a balance. It's creating an environment of which we can understand each other, hold each other accountable, not shame people, but hold each other accountable to a point of, okay, I respect this view or this philosophy. This is how it impacts me, or this is my philosophy. How does this impact you? And you discuss it. And if you can't reach an agreement, fine, but at least you have that open conversation about it. And ultimately, it's not even a matter of philosophies really clashing with each other. That's the problem. It's people clashing with each other in their own philosophies, in their own group of people. So just, if you have it in your mind and in your heart that you genuinely want to build bridges with others, you're going to go out into the world and find it for yourself. It's like I just finished mentioning, it's so important to draw wisdom from a myriad of sources, not just from the people you agree with, not just from your milieu, not just from your own circle of people that all think the same way you do. Actually gaining knowledge from people whose views are polarizing or even antithetical to your own can serve great wisdom and purpose in one's own life. And dang, dude, I gotta get off my soapbox. When everything starts tanking, it's quicksand, and you can let it overtake you. Movies have so many messages. Yeah. My husband was diagnosed with major and chronic depression. He went through a major portion of his life in numbness as well, so much so he ended up having electroshock therapy done. Wow, that's very intense. And yeah, I can definitely relate to very deep and intense depression. It's very arduous to get out of that cycle, but whatever works, right? Just as long as it's not a Band-Aid solution, a real permanent solution that actually causes you that actually serves as a guiding star to actually propel you to greater heights, to actually keep constantly pursuing excellence. Hey, it's been a really great talk. I've really enjoyed listening to your perspective. You have a way with words that's just as much as storytelling. I would love to continue it someday. Best of luck. Oh, well, thank you so much. On that note, I'm probably going to end the stream soon, too. We're approaching 100 minutes. It's been a long time. My throat is starting to dry out, and my camera is progressively dying, so we're probably going to wrap up the stream here soon. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. He went a year or more trying different meds. They didn't work. Meds didn't work for me either. Therapy was the last resort, but it helped. Hasn't been that dark since. Depression is still there, but not like that. Yeah, depression doesn't really go away. It's always going to linger, but it's just learning how to manipulate it, how to control it, and utilize it to your advantage. Like for me personally, the way that I engage with my depression still is I really enjoy being in dark places. Dark places actually very much comfort me. Where for most people it might be very scary because being in the dark is like being in the unknown. But for me, it's very calming. It's very soothing. And I utilize moments of I feel very good and very calm and very fortunate to be in this stasis, this area of stillness. and utilize that to my advantage. I find being in the dark a great opportunity to meditate, or a really great opportunity just to sit in it and reflect. And being able to utilize it in various ways can ultimately serve to one's advantage. It's not really ever going to go away, and that's just something that you've come to accept over time. Yeah, great, cool. So, thanks for bringing up the collab that I mentioned last week in your reaction. I'm glad you did something that might have opened new doors. Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So with all of that said, I really appreciate all of you being here. Again, I can't stress it enough. It means so much to me. In terms of updates on the channel, something that I am working on is creating a website where I can allow others to sign up for voice lessons with me. I'm opening up my voice studio again, which is going to be really exciting. It's just going to be done through Zoom, but we'll see how that goes. I have been uploading content to Patreon like crazy because I've started to work out creative solutions to get around the obstacles that I've been facing. So hopefully that should be going live soon, and I will absolutely keep everyone updated as to when that's happening. And yeah, for the time being, live streams are still going to be Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I think that's about it. So yeah. Thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. I'm very thankful for it, and I can't wait to see all of you in the next video and next live stream. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone.